Yes, this video is going to be spoiler heavy. It has final boss in the title. Hello there everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Joseph, and in today's Granblue Fantasy Relink video, we're going to be talking about the final boss of the game. And I'm talking the true final boss of the game, the one you find in Proud difficulty right at the end. Now there is another boss that is also spoiler heavy between Maniac and Proud difficulty, which if you've clicked on this video, it's not going to be much of a spoiler to you, but Bahamut Versa. This is not that boss we're going to be talking about, but if people are still struggling with that boss, do leave a comment down below before I go into the next section of the video for the boss we're actually talking about, and I'll make a video about that one too. So the strategy of beating the Tale of Bahamut's Rage is going to come down to two things. The first of which is going to be your build and your damage output. Damage output is going to be very important in this fight, and the first time you go into it is obviously going to be less effective than when you finally acquire some Terminus weapons for yourself. As you can see, I've acquired them for Percival and Siegfried so far. But you're going to need damage because there is a damage check involved in this fight, and having high damage is going to allow you to skip certain mechanics that are within the fight. Which brings me to the second aspect of what you need to be able to beat this fight, and it's just simply knowing what to expect when it comes to what mechanics Bahamut is going to do. So the rest of this video is going to outline what Bahamut does and how to avoid it. So at the start of the fight, you'll notice that you're back on the Grand Cipher where you fought Proto-Bahamut at the very prologue of the story. However, in this situation, you actually have cannons that you can fire at Bahamut with. You'll want to split into two groups of two, so if you have human party members, this is going to be much easier than if you do it solo, but it's definitely still possible solo. You're going to want to split into two parties of two of which are going onto the cannons to fire at Bahamut, as well as purple and red orbs that he spawns, and if you don't take them out quickly enough, he will fire them onto the ship to deal damage to you. The red ones should always take priority, as they have a much wider blast radius than the purple ones do, but you obviously want to try and take them all out. While this is happening, the other two party members will want to take on the Scotardi adds that come onto the ship that are just dark crystals that will continuously shoot beams at you until they're destroyed. After a little bit of back and forth with these orbs and the dark crystals, Bahamut will then summon one of 4 elemental crystals, which are fire, wind, ice and earth, and each one of them will behave differently, and you will summon these crystals periodically throughout the fight, and it's important that you take them down as quickly as possible, as doing so will stun Bahamut and give you a pure damage phase. Each of the crystal variants do different things, but realistically it comes to the earth one being one big one that shoots a shockwave out periodically, the wind ones being 4 in various corners that shoot tornadoes out, the fire ones being 2, one at each end of the ship, that will give a AoE marker onto 2 of the players that you need to move away from just before they land, otherwise you get meteored down, and the water ones just shoot ice crystals at you. Once the crystal goes down and the ship slams into Bahamut, he'll fall down and just allow you to deal a boatload of damage to him. After he's hit 80%, which hopefully he should have hit through this first damage phase, otherwise you're just going to repeat the mechanics again, he'll then perform Skyfall, which is a legally distinct Mega Flare essentially, which is a large AoE that spreads from the inside out of the ship, and you need to run to the corners of the ship as quickly as possible and keep running, because the large beam attack will suck you in and deal 99999 to insta-kill you essentially, so you definitely don't want to be getting hit by this. After this is performed, he'll then shoot Regan Live, which is his other legally distinct Mega Flare, but he's actually holding on to the ship as he does this, giving you free reign to deal damage to his arms while he's going. And because he's got his arm so close to the edge of the ship, if you stick closely enough to his arm, it's actually very difficult for you to get hit by this particular move. Do be careful while he's performing this move though, because he might rear up his other claw or try to bite you, and you'll want to be able to dodge these so that you don't get one-shotted by them. After these are finished, he'll summon another crystal of one of the 4 elements. You'll be required to take it out quickly. You'll get another slam into Proto-Bahamut and another damage phase. Now with any luck, you'll actually have your Skybound Dart ready by this point in the fight. If you're doing this for the first time, I would suggest using your first Skybound Art as soon as you can. And the nice trick with this is that if you space each individual Skybound Art out, as opposed to using them all in one go, you'll actually stun Bahamut for longer and therefore be able to deal damage for a much longer period of time, and the damage adds up to far more than you would have gotten by just getting a full burst and using them all at once. Hopefully, while you're doing all this damage in this second major damage phase, you'll actually break Bahamut as well and get even more damage. But if you don't manage to get him to 50% HP at this point, you'll just have to repeat a lot of the same mechanics you've seen here, maybe with some additional dark crystals pop up, until you do get him to 50%. At 50% HP, Bahamut will then go into his absolute judgment phase, which he's going to stay in for the rest of the fight, and then he's immediately going to cast Supernova, an upgraded version of Legally Distinct Mega Flare. This is probably the most complicated mechanic in the fight, but when you've seen it once or twice, it's really not that bad. So a large center AoE sigil will appear in the middle that will explode after a set amount of time, and then 2 of your party members will get smaller homing AoEs that don't finish casting until after the large center one triggers, so you want to avoid the large center one first. Then you'll get 2 large AoEs appear to the sides, and the homing of the first 2 characters' smaller AoEs will drop off before those finish casting, leaving the middle open for you to run to the middle if you're targeted before the 2 side ones pop, and leaving you safe while your smaller AoEs are left in the middle of the other ones. After this, the other 2 party members will then get their own homing sigils, and you'll want to drop these off en route to the sides of the ship after the large AoE sigils on the sides have exploded, because then you'll then see the actual Supernova attack, which is identical to Skyfall, which we've already seen. After this point, Bahamut in his Absolute Judgment form is largely the same as what you saw within the previous form, but he has a couple of extra moves, like slamming the floor down similar to what Bahamut Versa did, so making a shockwave but giving you a little window to deal damage. His Regin live attack now changes as well, so that when he's sitting off to the side of the ship, it's a little harder to hit him, and is a little bit more erratic in its movement, so be careful dodging this, and be particularly careful if Bahamut decides to do just a sweeping Regin live attack, because it comes at you pretty fast, so make sure your dodging is on point. The other additional mechanic that Proto Bahamut will have in his Absolute Judgment form is that he will start making 4 orbs appear off the ship that you have to target with the cannons on the ship quickly, because if you don't take them down, the crystals, like the ones we've talked about previously, will get shields on them, making them significantly harder to take down. And if you don't take down the crystals in time, then you're going to be taking a world of pain afterwards. Just like before, taking the crystal down will slam the ship into Bahamut and he'll get stunned, leaving him open for a massive damage phase. Now, if you've been farming Bahamut a lot, it's usually at this point that you can deal enough damage to him to either make him go into his final phase or just kill him outright if you've been careful. But if you have SBAs or Skybound Arts appearing at this point in the fight and it's your first time doing it, or your gear isn't quite up to scratch and it's taking longer to get to this point, perhaps hold off on them, because you're probably going to need them for the damage phase that's coming. If by this point you haven't got into his final phase, just avoiding claw attacks and pretty much everything that you've seen up until this point is going to be standard for the rest of the fight. The only other mechanic that you realistically have to worry about is a second Skyfall, and this one has a lot less warning than the first one. So just if you see Bahamut flying off into the distance, just look out for the title of the attack so you know to run to the sides of the ship. From this point on, all you need to worry about is all of the mechanics that you've seen up until this point, including the orbs from the very first phase, the crystals, the claw attacks, Regin Live. All of those things are just going to be on repeat until you get him to below 15%, where Bahamut will fly off into the distance in front of the ship, and then you'll slam into him. And then he's going to prepare his final attack, where you will have a small period of time in order for you to take that last sliver of health away and finish the fight. If you don't finish it in time, he insta-wipes you and you instantly lose. So this is why I suggested holding off on your SBAs until the last possible second, because you're going to need them, as well as your link attacks, to be able to take that last sliver of health off to win the fight. And that's it. That's pretty much all of the mechanics there is to Proto Bahamut. And trust me, after the first time, it's not nearly as intimidating as it's either been made to sound, or perhaps you're psyching yourself out in your own head. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to show you it's really not too bad, provided you've built correctly. So if you want to use all of the other videos that I've made to get yourself prepared for this fight, just use those for reference if you'd like, or anyone else's for that matter. And once you've farmed it at least once or twice, you'll know the mechanics. So all it will take for you to really effectively farm it is to just increase your damage capabilities. And once you've done that, I'm actually going to leave my most recent clear of Bahamut that I actually did on random matchmaking with Rackham, who I don't have the Terminus weapon for, and you can see quite how quickly you can take this fight down if you're able to skip certain phases of the fight, which is very, very possible to do. So yeah, enjoy.
Took that one on the chin.
Don't push it, okay?
Bring it! hold nothing back.
Do I ever? Let's go!
So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to teach you about Proto Bahamut, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. I'm sure that a lot of people, like myself, have absolutely been blitzing Proto Bahamut by this point, but this video is for people who perhaps haven't got to that point yet, or have just hit that point and they're not quite sure how to tackle it. So hopefully this makes it seem a lot less intimidating to you. If you've enjoyed this content, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I've been really enjoying making GBR content, and hopefully I'll continue to be able to do so for a while yet. And if you really enjoyed the content and you'd like to support the channel directly, perhaps consider clicking the link in the description box below for my Patreon channel, where you can get artwork made for you and all sorts of other benefits as well. Thank you once again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care everyone. Bye bye.